All right. Good afternoon again. Just another note on World Humanitarian Day and obviously why this day was chosen. As you know, in 2003, 22 of our colleagues were murdered when terrorists targeted the UN compound in Baghdad. Today, we honor their memory as we recall their courage and dedication to improving the lives of the Iraqi people who had suffered so much. We also think of our colleagues who survived the bombing. Many of them quietly returned to work, serving here at headquarters and in the field, further keeping alive of our friends who never came back. This morning, the Deputy Secretary General laid a wreath at a memorial in the visitors' lobby. Speaking to the theme of this year's day, she stressed how women presence make the UN efforts more effective, from addressing health epidemics to supervising support to victims of gender-based violence. Thanks to their efforts, millions of people have found protection from conflict and hope itself rekindled, the Deputy Secretary General said. Her remarks were distributed, and in his message, the Secretary General outlined their role in supporting civilians caught up in crisis and addressing disease outbreaks. He calls on world leaders and parties to conflict everywhere to live up to their legal obligations to protect all humanitarians from harm. His message was distributed over the weekend. The Secretary General will be back in the office late tomorrow afternoon. He has a meeting scheduled late in the afternoon with the U.S. Secretary of State, Michael Pompeo, who they will meet here. And before you asked, on September 18th, we have a press conference scheduled by the Secretary General in advance of the General Assembly. And the Secretary General joins the Food and Agricultural Organization in expressing condolences to the family of the former Director General of the FAO, Jacques Diouf, who passed away Saturday at age 81. Diouf began his first term at the helm of FAO in January 1994 and held the position until 2011. Diouf's efforts towards ending hunger and boosting food security and sustainable agriculture will continue to be remembered through the FAO Jacques Diouf Award. The prize awarded recognizes the best contribution to global food security. And in a statement we issued yesterday, the Secretary General condemned the horrific attack that took place on Saturday on a wedding ceremony in Kabul, claiming the lives of 63 people and injuring over 180. The Secretary General also expressed his deepest sympathies to the families of the victims and government and people of Afghanistan. And on Saturday, we issued a statement in which the Secretary General warmly congratulated the Sudanese people on the important signing ceremony of the documents on transitional civilian authority in the Republic of Sudan. He applauded the role of the African Union and Ethiopia in having mediated the Sudanese-led talks. The Secretary General looks forward to engaging with and supporting the transitional government institutions. He reiterated the commitment of the UN to assist the transitional process as it seeks to achieve the long-standing aspiration of the people of Sudan for democracy and peace. The Secretary General also underscored the importance of paving the way for Sudan's socioeconomic recovery and setting the country on a path of sustainable development benefiting Sudan's diversity and vibrant society. The UN stands ready to work with international partners and the people of Sudan in this endeavor. And in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ebola has now spread to South Kivu, with cases confirmed in the villages of Chowemwenga, that's just south of the town of Bukavu. A woman previously identified as a contact for two people who had contacted Ebola traveled from Beni to South Kivu last week. She and her 17-month-old baby have now died from the disease, and her 7-month-old baby is receiving treatment. The World Health Organization reports that rapid response teams were sent to the village. They quickly isolated and treated people with Ebola, traced contacts, began vaccinating, and raising awareness about the disease. In North Kivu and Ituri provinces, the outbreak transmission continues with an average of 81 new cases per week. There are currently no confirmed cases of Ebola outside of the DRC. And the High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, just concluded a 4-day visit to Brazil. He appealed for increased international engagement, including by financial institutions and development partners in communities hosting Venezuelan refugees and migrants. There are over 180,000 Venezuelan refugees and migrants in Brazil. An average of 500 arrive every day, most in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. And in Geneva, the Convention on International Trade and Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, better known as CITES, is having its annual conference to strengthen global wildlife trade rules. The conference received 56 proposals to change the levels of protection for wildlife species. 20 of them are concerned with the growing appetite for the exotic pet trade of amphibians and reptiles. Others pertain to the debate on how best to manage the African elephant population and what to do with ivory products produced by these animals. Delegates of the conference also decided whether musical instruments made of precious wood from trees regulated by the convention should be exempt from controls. Governments will evaluate each listing proposal and decide to adopt it by consensus or, if necessary, a vote. And I've been asked by some of you about the appointment of Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva to the position of Army Commander in Sri Lanka. As you will have seen on that issue the statement already issued by the High Commissioner for Human Rights. For our part, we are concerned about this appointment. The United Nations remains committed to the highest human rights standards for all personnel deployed as part of UN peace operations. All Sri Lankan uniformed personnel participating in UN peace operations undergo extensive human rights screening. And that's it. And Monica will brief you when you're done with me. Yes, ma'am, Edie.
Thank you, Steph. Does the Secretary General have any comment on the escalating situation in Idlib and the latest reports by Turkey that airstrikes have targeted a Turkish army convoy inside Idlib?
Yes, we remained concerned about the latest developments in the northwest of Syria. We are aware of the reports of a Turkish military convoy that is en route to a Turkish observation post in Morek in southern Idlib was struck by aircraft fire earlier today. Turkey's defense ministry has indicated that this has resulted in multiple casualties. These reports are of grave concern to us and remind us that violence in Idlib is not just a humanitarian issue. It also poses a significant risk to regional security. The United Nations reiterates the call for an urgent de-escalation of the situation in the northwest part of Syria, and for all parties to recommit fully to the ceasefire arrangements agreed by Russia and Turkey in 2018. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Steph. With regard to the Secretary General statement on Sudan, and he said that the United Nations stands ready to provide all the support it needs for the transitional government. Can you elaborate exactly what kind of support can the transitional government in Sudan expect from the United Nations?
First of all, it's up to the transitional. We'll have to see what they require of us, right? We have a very large country presence in Sudan. We have obviously the joint mission in Darfur, but also a country team that is very active. We will stand ready to help the transitional authorities with whatever they need in terms of mobilizing support, in terms of capacity development to help to make sure that the transitional authorities get on the right start, and also to ensure that everyone's voice is heard. But we're there and standing by to help in any way that we possibly can. Yes, sir.
Yes, also on the Secretary General's statement on Sudan, what was missing was any reference to accountability, and I mention that because the signer on behalf of the military was Mohammed Hamdan, who was reportedly involved in the atrocities in Darfur years ago, and also in the killing of civilian protesters on June 3rd. And the military is reportedly insisting that Bashir not be turned over to the ICC. He's being tried in a national court for corruption, but not for the crimes that the ICC has indicted him on. So could you explain why there was no reference to the issue of accountability, and will that be one of the things that the UN will try to work with the transitional government to achieve?
Look, Sudan is in a delicate transitional phase, for lack of a better word. We are there to make sure that this phase goes well and that the interests of the Sudanese people are kept at the center. We will be guided by the Prime Minister and what in any way we can support them. The statement in no way takes away from our previous statements on the need for every country, every member state to respect the rulings of the International Criminal Court and for accountability to be had. Maggie, and then...
Also on Sudan. So now that some sort of agreement's been reached, how will this affect Mr. Haysam's role? Will he... I mean, because he's supposed to be facilitating with the AU. I mean, will this?
I mean, he will continue to work on the
But will
Sudan
he be
file.
part of the transition process?
Well, the UN is not part of the transition process. We are there to help the transition process.
But would he head that up for you?
Mr. Haysam will be there. They're also the head of our resident coordinator who heads up the UN system. Yeah.
Thank you, Stéphane. Which are the priority topics and issues that Secretary General plans to bring up at tomorrow's meeting with the Secretary of State Pompeo? Are there special issues that he plans to bring up at this?
Well, you know, the meeting was done at the request of the Department of State. We will listen. We were obviously very. We're always very happy to be able to have a direct dialogue with the Secretary of State. He's here also to attend the Security Council meeting. There are a lot of issues on the joint U.S.-UN agenda, and I'm sure we'll go down the list as much as possible, and we hope to share a readout with you afterwards. Yes, Majid.
Stéphane, on Syria, do you have any update about the Board of Inquiry?
No, sir. No.
And when do you expect the work of the inquiry to start?
One of the things I've learned in my few years here is best not to predict as to when things will start or when they will end. So we hope, but slight humor aside, obviously the work on on finding the names and the terms of reference is going at a clip. So we hope to have something soon.
Stéphane, about related to this, one of the main questions obviously is whether the coordinate that the UN shared with the Syrian government has been used to attack the rebels. Is this going to be the main goal of the inquiry?
I think I would refer you back to what the Secretary General said at the time. In terms of the goals of the inquiry, we set them out broadly in the SG statement, and the terms of reference, I think, will provide more detail. Yes, sir.
Thank you, yeah. On Yemen, there have been quite large protests in the south of the country, movement for secession, which seems to be gaining traction as a result of the recent military changeover in Aden. From the SG's point of view, does this shake up Martin Griffiths' job and the peace process moving forward?
Does it shake up?
Does it change the priorities? Does the Southern question have to go higher up the agenda?
Look, I'm not going to go into details from here. Does it make things easier for Mr. Griffiths? Probably not. Does it change his main priority of getting a political solution to the current situation in Yemen? That remains his priority. Thank you, Monica.